Hello, everyone. Welcome back. This is the Blue Line Blast podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, alongside Matthew Blittner. Back again. Please subscribe to our channel, like, comment. We appreciate everybody, and we appreciate veterans, not only in the United States, Canada, around the world, but it is Remembrance Day and Veterans Day here in the United States and in Canada. Shout out to my dad, who passed away earlier this year, veteran Marine Corps. Just got the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Goonie Birds Marine Corps League over the weekend. So shout out to him and all the veterans. I know, Matt, you got some shout outs as well.
Yeah, shout out to my grandfather on my mother's side, my third cousin also on my mother's side, great uncle. I've got a few on my dad's side. I think it's my great grandfather. Yeah, but always going through the 1900s for war.
Yeah, I got my uncle served in World War II and a couple other guys that I know go back to Civil War. So again, Veterans Day, Remembrance Day to everybody out there. But we got some NHL news to dive into. We got Hall of Fame stuff, loaded show. Neal McHale going to join us as well, talking Young Guns, everything top to bottom around the league. But we got to start with the news. Kevin Weeks coming out, talking about outdoor games, stadium series games, international games, overseas. Matthew, didn't we talk about this last week?
Jim, this is the latest evidence that not only do more people watch and listen to our show than what we think, but that the NHL indeed watches and listens to our show, because it's too much of a coincidence that 1 week, almost to the day, after we release an episode where we spent a solid 15 minutes discussing, the league should go abroad, the league should do this. Here's a list of places that the league should go for an outdoor game. Jim, I don't believe in coincidence like that. I'm sorry, I really don't. Someone over there at the league in a position of authority is watching, listening to the show. Listen, you know what? Call us. I'm at Matthew Blittner on Twitter. Jim, at Jim Biringer. Feel free to reach out to us. Our DMs are open, people. So if you're at the league office and you're one of the people who got the idea from listening to our show, give us a call. We'll have you on.
Absolutely. Look, I know they're over there. Global Series game, I believe Nashville Predators, Pittsburgh Penguins over in Sweden. I know Steve Mayer, NHL president and content of events, he was on Making the Rounds as well, talking about potential of a outdoor game, international game. But I know we talked about it last week. There's a lot of great venues over there. Obviously, some Switzerland events. There's definitely some things they could do throughout the European countries, some famous rinks as well. And, Kevin Weeks talking about it. Again, he puts out the tweet. You quote tweeted him. Again, Blue Line Blast podcast is where it's at. We're breaking news ahead of you. Allianz Arena, he's talking about Ultra Ford. Again, we said it last week. You did. You went on about it. All these great events, all these great international stadium series games, outdoor games that can be played overseas. It's going to happen eventually. I mean, look, we had a World Junior game played in Buffalo outdoors. So if that's going to happen, I think we're going to have one internationally, considering also they just opened a European office in Zurich, Switzerland.
First of all, that adds to the thing. There's no coincidences in this. If they're opening a European office, they're having a game outdoors. They're having a game there that's beyond just, the global series and stuff. They're doing it outdoors. They're going to go big. And Jim, I just looked it up during your little monologue about, seating capacity for a thing. How about this? We have an NHL Stadium Series game at Old Trafford, okay, at just over 74,000 people, which is the home of Manchester United, okay. You can absolutely have it, and I know 74,000 wouldn't be the record, what with the big house, and even MetLife Stadium was bigger than that, not by much, but by a couple thousand. But the allure of it, telling me bring out some people from Manchester United for the game. Have them be, if you want to have them waving a flag, if you want to have them doing introductions the way you had, Wayne Gretzky and Mike Ruzioni do at Four Nations. There's a lot of ways that you can play into the soccer culture, the football culture.
Football culture.
Overseas over there, okay? You can absolutely do something big. And as much as half the league, actually more than half the league, is going to be annoyed at what I'm about to say, here's the two teams that you send over for the thing. And you know what? I'm going to give two possibilities for a game at Old Trafford. So, one, you send the Montreal Canadiens and the Boston Bruins, who hold the record for the most games played against each other in NHL history. The biggest rivalry, arguably, in the NHL. You send them over there. You want the Brits, the English over there, getting hooked on hockey. Let them let them watch a game between the Canadiens and Bruins for 60 or more minutes. Depending on if overtime is necessary or something. And Jim, please, I'm begging for that one game. No 3-on-3 overtime, no shootout. I know it's regular season, but put the playoff overtime rules in effect. Sudden death, 5-on-5, full 20-minute period, and just play till there's a winner. Okay? There's some, yes, I know 3-on-3 can be exciting at times, and I know the shootout had its fans early in its inception. Jim, it's like, if aliens ever came down to the planet, you want to show them the best of what we are. That way they don't turn against us. So you've got to show the Brits over there and show Europe the best of the NHL and not the worst of it. Okay. And then
I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. No shootout. Though I will say being at the Big House in 2014, the shootout was actually pretty fun.
Yeah, but 2014 was still people still liked the shootout.
Yeah, that's true. That's fair.
People don't like it anymore.
No.
And the other game that I would say that you play, and I know we crap all over them a lot, but you have to put New York because it's a big market, original six. You put the Rangers over there, and you can either have them play the Kings. That way you get both coasts. Two big markets, New York, LA. Or you really play up history for a minute. And you have, because they incessantly repeat this history all the time, it's the only thing that they care about, that they show. You have the Rangers play the Canucks. That way you still get the Canadian market, and you drag all the guys from 1994 out to Old Trafford, out to Manchester, and you let them, be the honorary captains, let them be whatever. And that's what you do. And you have the Rangers play the Canucks in a rematch of the 94 Cup. Because goodness knows that's the only time that the Rangers, that's the only history that the Rangers acknowledge, pretty much.
That is very fair. No, that is a very fair point. Look, I think those would be some good matchups. I think maybe you throw a Detroit team in there as well. You could throw Detroit in there. Any of the original six teams you could bring overseas. I think that would be a good thing. I think also, some of the better games have actually involved the Canadian teams just because of the following that they have. So it'd be interesting to see. I definitely agree with you. I think Canadians Bruins though would be a great matchup overseas internationally. And I think for some reason they'll probably be the game. But again, no inside information on that. But I just have a feeling that could be the game. So going to be interested to see what the NHL does in regards to those international potential outdoor games. But just a coincidence that the Blue Line Blast podcast brought it up last week, and a week later, hey, we're talking about it.
We were on it first. And Jim, before we get to our very special guest for the evening, because we see that he's here in studio, there is one other option that you could do for the outdoor game there. You pick an original six team. I don't care which one.
Pick them. And
you have them play against the defending Stanley Cup champion. So whatever year it is, so let's say it's 3 years from now that they go outdoors. I hope it's sooner, but let's just say it's 3 years. You have an original six team who has a built-in market, obviously, and you have them play the defending Stanley Cup champion. That right there, that way you get the champion. You're going to get a very good team. You don't necessarily know if the original six team you pick is going to be very good in that particular year, but their original six, they're historic. The league loves them. And you have the defending Cup champ. and you trot out Lord Stanley Silver Chalice at center ice before the game, Jim, you want to have the fans going nuts. That's the way to do it.
I'm down for it. 2 thumbs up for me on that. I like that option because that's the way the All-Star game used to be played. It was the All-Stars versus the Cup champs. Hey, why not? Regional 16 versus the Cup champs. Hey, I'll take it. I think that would be a hell of an attraction overseas. But we got a special guest with us, Matthew. Why don't you introduce him?
Well, I believe we first have to go to our non-existent sponsor break. So on the other side of our non-existent sponsor break, we'll be talking with Neal McHale, who was just covering the Hall of Fame, the Hockey Hall of Fame induction ceremony, the rings and everything. So we'll be back with Neal right after this message from no one. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back from our non-existent sponsor break. I swear one of these days we're going to actually have someone to say there. I'm Matthew Blittner, joined co-host Jim Biringer. Now we're joined by a special guest of the evening who looks like he's in a bunker somewhere, but he's actually in a car. Neal McHale, who does tremendous work all over the place covering hockey, currently writing for IIHF.com. Neal, welcome to the Blue Line Blast podcast.
What's going on, guys?
Not much. I just saw you in Jersey. I think we just saw you there, right? Like you were there.
Yeah, I did. I did my October tour, as I like to call it, where I did a few games at MSG, and then I made my way to Jersey and did 3 sets of games there. So always nice at the beginning of the year to take the temperature on what the start of the season is for the locals, as well as some of the visiting teams that came in. And we obviously had a nice mixture with the Oilers coming in, the Wild came in. Got to see a really interesting young and so far looking pretty fast Pittsburgh Penguins team as well. So it's been exciting.
Well, yeah, no doubt. It's definitely been an exciting year this season for the NHL so far through the first roughly 6 weeks. But before we get to the young, exciting teams, it's only right that, put age before beauty and we, celebrate the Hockey Hall of Fame induction inductees who just went in this weekend. Neal, you were up there in Toronto covering. What were some of the highlights of the weekend for you?
Yeah, well, it was great. And boy, you say age before beauty. I mean, some players like Zdeno Chara, Duncan Keith, even Joe Thornton. The way that they left the NHL is kind of exactly how they look. Joe Thornton, was getting that gray beard to begin with, so he sort of brought it to the Hall of Fame with him too. But really great, a really impressive class. I really thought, like, in terms of my impressions of it too, it was just we're getting to that age, guys, where it's really starting to look weird, where you're seeing guys who you saw a good majority of their career play out live, and then you're seeing them now go into the Hall of Fame. At least for me, I'm at that age. For other people, it's just kind of more signals of the time passage. But for me, that was a little surreal to see that. But just really, you have the great stories of it. I mean, Duncan Keith, part of that, Chicago Blackhawks, what is basically a modern day dynasty, the 3-cup run that they had. Zdeno Chara, who's Mr. Everything. I mean, we're talking about a Cup champion. We're talking about one of the best defensemen in National Hockey League history, the best hardest slap shot in NHL history. But all the questions in the scrums are about, like, what else are you doing? Are you, when's your next marathon? When's the next big mountain you're climbing? And then everybody knows about Jumbo Joe Thornton. A great career, one of the, and unfortunately he's in the conversation, one of the greatest players to never win a Stanley Cup. He's right up there with Marcel Dion. But just a really, electric personality, and obviously a fantastic player. It's actually funny, before the Hall of Fame, about an hour before, I did the Leafs Bruins morning skate, and right before Marco Sturm's media availability was going up, somebody at least had to ask him, hey, what was it like being on the other side of a trade that I think a lot of people in Boston certainly still don't talk about in maybe the most friendliest ways. And, and he made a point of saying it was great for me. I really enjoyed the fit. And he went on to win a Stanley Cup with the Bruins. But in terms of the NHL players of it, and we shouldn't forget Alexander Mogilny, who was not present there, but a really impressive class in so many ways. And, it's going to be really exciting to see who else we have, down the line in terms of Hall of Famers for more years that I've sort of lived through it. But weekend is always wonderful. The Hall of Fame does a great job. All of the public relations individuals who help put that on were really great in terms of accommodating time. Scrums, we're used to certain scrums in locker rooms where you got to be in and out in 15 minutes, but they allowed so much time with all the players, and it was just a really great thing to experience.
Yeah, I mean, look, the Hockey Hall of Fame is just the great weekend, induction weekend, and had the pleasure to be up there when Lundqvist went in. And, this was an impressive class. Alexander McGillney, obviously former Devil. He played with Buffalo, Vancouver, Toronto as well. And speaking of Devils, and, obviously the big question that's going to be asked is when Patrick Elias is going to go into the Hockey Hall of Fame. Is he a Hall of Famer given some of the other players that have gone in, like the Sedins, Alfredson, guys like that? And plus, we look at first-time eligibility players for next year. Patrice Bergeron, Carey Price, Zetterberg's up there as well. Do you see Patrick Elias getting in next year or eventually? And do you feel he's a Hall of Famer?
It's a good question. For me, I do look at him as a Hall of Famer. I think, though, we just got Alexander Mogilny in for a while. I don't know. There might be a bit of a wait on here because I will tell you, there's some, I think Carey Price is a player that's going to probably get a real strong look. You get to the ticky-tacky ones, right? Like for me, and I'm not making any assumptions about the committee. They have a hard job to do. Let's remember that. But I do know that, some folks that have that Olympic pedigree and playing on some of the winning teams, whether it's with Canada, United States, wherever it might be, that tends to be something that I've noticed a pattern of the Hockey Hall of Fame really looking at. And so I wondered, does Patrick Elias get in before Ryan Getzlaf, even though you could do the comparisons there on that? That's just something I've wondered. I think Patrick Marleau is got to be somebody who, it would have been really nice for him and the Thornton connection to have them in the same year. I was a little surprised he didn't get in this year. He's a guy I look at, when's Chris Osgood going to get in? So, heck, I was doing a little bit of looking into some other goaltenders the other day, and this one's probably more on the fringe Hall of Famer, but can we have the Mika Kiprusoff conversation? The Pekka Rinne conversation? Probably Pekka over Mika, but there's just so much talent, I think. And then you also have to look at someone like Megan Duggan, who should be getting in. So you really have to start thinking about who some of the other people are, because only X amount of people are going to go in each year. I don't know if we're going to have to wait as long as Mogilny for Patrick Elias, because I do think he has impressive credentials. I don't just think back to his years in New Jersey. I think about, there was a period of time, guys, really in the late 90s, early 2000s, where he was one of the best wingers in the National Hockey League, if not the best winger. And then the other conversation, since we're talking about Elias here, is that 2006 era, when he comes back from the Olympics. I mean, people don't realize he almost died, and he comes back and he has an exceptional finish this season, an exceptional playoff. Certainly a remarkable player. I just think we may have to wait because there's so much talent. There's so many guys every year that come into the conversation. I mean, Keith Tkachuk was a name I also didn't mention too. When's that conversation potentially going to happen too? So, we've been surprised. I was surprised when I saw Mogilny got in this year, because you get so conditioned to not seeing him. But I think we may wait a little bit on Patrick Elias. And the other thing too is people change out on the committee too, and that lends itself to new perspectives and things. So I certainly think there's an argument for him. I think he is. I grew up watching him firsthand, so part of that's there too, but I certainly think that there's a real appetite for him. But again, he may have to wait his time, just like his former teammate did.
Now, look, Neal, you did an excellent breakdown there, especially on Elias's case. I'm a little surprised that you didn't mention Mike Richter, in terms of people who, have. That's a good one, Matt. That's a real good one, yeah. a legitimate case. But to try to blend, old and new a little bit, I want to get your thoughts on a little something here with the Hall and potential players. So obviously we know that guys like Sidney Crosby are going to go in, first ballot. Alexander Ovechkin going to go in first ballot. There are players right now who, toward the tail end of their career who are just, slam dunk locks going into the Hall for whenever, their 3-year waiting period ends after whenever their careers ends. But with how much young talent is in the league right now, and, we're seeing it in the scoring race, and we're going to get to that in a few minutes. Project out, take out that crystal ball of yours. Players under the age of 30 around the league right now, if you could pick 2 or 3 who you think one day might be Hall of Famers, and no, you can't use Connor McDavid because that's a top-out answer. Who do you think is going into the Hall who's under the age of 30 and playing right now?
All right, what's Draisaitl at? Or is that a cop-out too?
I should have said no Oilers players, but I didn't, so I'll let you go with Draisaitl because I did say you have to name 2 or 3.
Okay, well, you know what? I'm thinking here, and I do my famous thing I do. This is conditioned from working at the National Hockey League. I'm thinking of all the teams alphabetically here and thinking of players off their roster who would be. I'll tell you, he's hurt this year. He won't play. Alexander Barkov is there for me. Is he at 30 yet? I don't think he is.
He's not that old. Close. I think he's getting close.
Yeah, he's getting close, but you're under the 30, so you're good.
And then the other one for me, boy, I'm gonna re-listen to this and think of a name and be kicking myself. The other one for me, I have a name in my head. I want to make sure I'm locking it in. I'm gonna go with David Pastrnak.
I could see it. I could see it just because, again, like you said before, the Olympics, the World Championships, like the importance to playing for your country, what he's done for Boston, right? Like I could definitely see it.
And you know what? I'm challenging myself. I'm giving you a third because you want projections and you want a hot take on here too. I'll tell you a player I've watched a little bit this year, and I'm saying he has it. He has the potential in him. Let's go with Quentin Byfield.
Wow.
Okay, there's your. I think we're going to look at a real special player by the time that career is over.
Neal, that's what we call on the show a blast from the blue line. Okay. Maybe it's not 100-mile-an-hour slap shot, but that's definitely 95-mile-an-hour slapper.
That's right. That's what you need. Just get like the Rob Blake shot.
Yeah, that's a good shot though. Rob Blake is solid. We don't need to go Char level with the slap shots here on the Blue Line Blast podcast, but we talk about young guns. Matt brings guys up under 30, but we go around. You look at the influx of talent, right? That's in here, and all the number 1 draft picks that have really stepped up in the development of these players, right? We always throw the term generational talent around like it's like the new hot phrase, right? Like it's the hot phrase, but realistically, we can have the conversation about Bedard and Celebrini. Then you have the elite players, but you look at the top of the scoring race. Obviously, McKinnon, all right, we know what he can do, right? Like he's up there. But Leo Carlsson, Connor Bedard, Macklin Celebrini. I mean, after the first couple of seasons in Chicago, Bedard was like, all right, the hype, whatever. Celebrini's come and done when he did what he's doing. But the fact that Leo Carlsson, Anaheim Ducks, I mean, expect that, it's got to be a surprise to you.
It is. I don't think anybody saw him going that way because unlike the Sharks, who people I think thought might take a bit of a step, I didn't think the Ducks best. I guess I would say the talent that were going to fill up the top 6 of the Ducks were filled with some of the older guys who could kind of shovel the load when the games get tough and teams start getting a little bit more tape on guys like Leo Carlsson, for example. So, and the Sharks obviously have been, their talent has obviously flourished too, but this year. But when I think about Anaheim, you mentioned Leo Carlsson. I got to tell you, this, and he has been exceptional. And I covered him in his draft. I covered him when he was in the house for the Stanley Cup final prior to his draft year. A really exceptional personality. So to see him succeed is I think a really good good story for them, because we remember how his first season went when they were really kind of doing the first time you saw an NHL team do load management on him. So to see him really getting acclimated now and thriving in an NHL schedule is a really nice thing to see. But that Beckett Seneca looks like a real special player, and you knew what Mason McTavish could be, and obviously they got that contract sorted out too, and that's a special one. And Cutter Gauthier has been really fun to watch too for them, and that's a player that's a little bit older. They identified him obviously before he turned professional that this is a guy who we want in their core, and now it's paying dividends for them. So I mean, that's been an exceptional one. If you want to talk about Anaheim, if there's another team you want to talk about in the West, I don't want to jump the gun here, but San Jose has been another team that the record is maybe not, they haven't had that great streak like Anaheim has been on, or had this season. But that's another team where you got the Celebrinis. You have Will Smith. You have William Eklund is obviously another really outstanding player. It's just a lot of talent, and the West used to be, I mean, me growing up, it was always the faster of the two conferences, and these two teams really bring that back to what you remember Anaheim, and they were big teams too, those Anaheim and San Jose teams, but they were fast teams too, and they had a lot of scoring prowess, and it's coming back, and it's the young players who are really kind of guiding them with them, but it's also paying attention to the guys like Gauthier who are a little bit older, who were individuals that the organization, sort of identified, at one point, and it's really kind of paying off for them too.
Yeah. Now, first of all, the Anaheim Ducks, I mean, they need to, honestly, they should have like a party every day of the week and twice on Sunday that they were able to swindle Cutter Gauthier away from Philadelphia for Jamie Draisaitl. Like that, the fact that they were able to do that, that's highway robbery to the nth degree, right there, the way it looks right now. But one of the things that I'm hearing from you throughout this conversation with you, Neal, is the various generations, and obviously, like we said, we know about the Crosbys and the Ovechkins, who the oldest generation playing, and then of course you have the McDavids, the McKinnons, the Draisaitl's, and now you've also got the Bedard, the Celebrinis, but we also have like the Cole Caulfield generation that's sort of like in between, it's sort of like that halfway point in between generations, because Cole Caulfield, he's only 24, and look at what he's doing this year with Montreal.
Yeah, that's a good point, and I'll tell you, and I was thinking a little bit, you were talking about the Blackhawks before, and Bedard, and obviously he's just getting his career started, and he's had an exceptional start to the season, and the Blackhawks haven't looked half bad either. And I'll tell you one thing that's impressed me with the Blackhawks, a player who they brought into their system before you had Bedard, in Alex Vlasic, right? And now he's starting to thrive a little bit. And that player I think he just turned 24, and he's a guy who you could start to look at, he's eating a lot of minutes. I think he's leading the team in terms of minutes per game. You're starting to see not just the offensive guys shine, but also the players that are just starting to come to their own. But Cole Caulfield's a great example. That's a team, by the way, Montreal with they're going to get their first full year of like Ivan Demidov with them, who again younger than the profile of Caulfield, like you mentioned, but just a lot of talent in the National Hockey League, and it's not to go too far from the NHL conversation of this, but it's going to be really interesting to see what the age profile looks like when we get around to January 1st or 2nd, and we start to see what those Olympic rosters look like. And if a guy like Cole Caulfield, maybe makes the team over, say, different standard of players who have been in historically, like maybe a Patrick Kane or Chris Kreider or Vincent Trocheck, be very interesting to see, what different nations decide to do, particularly United States and Canada, which have leaned heavily on the veterans in the past years.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's been like the big topic of conversation, right? When it comes to the Olympics, like what is Team USA and what's Team Canada going to do with these young guys that are coming up? And, considering like all of us have been around the rinks, all of us have heard what the scouts have been saying. It's Olympic year. Guys have been put on notice who are on Four Nations teams, right? Like these guys are playing hard, and like Cole Caulfield and, Nick Suzuki are two names like for both teams that are like, to me, Nick Suzuki right now, what he's done to me is a lock for Team Canada, in my opinion. And I think because Team USA needs goals and they lost by a goal of 4 Nations, like, how are you not putting Cole Caulfield on the team considering he can score overtime goals? But there's so much other guys, like, it was really impressive what we're seeing with Jackson Lacombe, Lane Hudson. Like, there's just so much young talent in this league right now, and it's so great to see that. Like, not to say that we're tired of the McDavid, because McDavid broke somebody's ankles against Columbus. I mean, that was ridiculous, that move that he put on. But Draisaitl, all those guys, it's just to see that transition and that next wave that's coming to keep the sport so healthy and where it is right now.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I mean, the other thing too is what sells the National Hockey League? It's goals. Yeah. It's goals. And to see, I mean, we're getting into November now, guys, and we're still seeing some pretty high scoring games to start the year. I mean, and you see that the first couple weeks of the year, you see the big comebacks, and you see some lopsided games, and you go, okay, that's the rust. That's the rust of getting into the regular season. But we're approaching what are we in, like 5 weeks now into the season or something like that? I mean, so we're starting to kind of say, you know what, this is a really heavy offensive league. Mostly, unless you're dealing with a four goal lead going in the third period, not much seems to be safe. And just the talent, league wide, in every single conference, in every single division, it is like, I mean, you can't really go any region without having some form of a really electric talents in it. And I think that's excellent for the game. I mean, we talk about, comes up a lot of, is the NHL going to expand or whatever it's going to look like that. And I often wonder, like, is there enough talent for it? But then you have starts of the season like this and you go, okay, there's quite a bit of talent in the NHL. So I just think it's a real fun time to be a fan. And it really coincides with the electricity of last year, the 4 Nations, and getting to really see hockey at a level, a really high level that brings in a lot of fans. Now you're going to have basically at least 2.5 weeks of it in February, and I hope people get to really witness a lot of the best the NHL has to offer in terms of the scoring end too, but just the folks that really deserve to represent for their nation, which is why I'm so happy at IHF to cover that side of things. But I just think that there's so much to like about the game right now, and you throw in the Olympics and you have this extra marketing opportunity for the league, which is really special.
Neal, excellent summation all around. And before we let you go, Neal, I'm going to go ahead and say something that I think all three of us are tiptoeing around right now, and I don't think it's a blast from the blue line, because I think it's actually pretty accurate. But everyone always considers for the NHL, the 1980s were the highest scoring decade in NHL history, arguably the most talent. If you look up and down on most rosters. Is it a stretch to say that right now, what we are seeing in 2025 is the most talented NHL in the history of the league?
Oh, it's so I think the thing too, I thought you were going to ask about goals per game and the kind of crazy scores you used to see back then, but the goaltending has gotten superiorly better.
Again, so.
Yeah. So all around, I mean, you're saying the most talented?
Yeah, the most talented now that the league's ever been. I think it passes the 1980s decade with the sheer talent that is in abundance.
You can make the argument because, as I said before, you can go to pretty much any pockets of teams. You can go up to the Rust Belt, and there's 4 or 5 really talented players that are worth the price of admission. You go to this area and you have players too. I mean, we talk about the young kid in the Islanders and Schaefer, and Jack Hughes and Jesper Bratt, and you go down into Florida and you have older guys like Nikita Kucherov, and the Panthers have tons of players, Verhaeghe and Reinhardt. What I'm saying is basically coast to coast, there's just so much talent in there. And if it's not on the goal scoring side of it, you have, we're seeing the best of some really talented goaltenders, like individuals that could be, real franchise names in the history of their organization. So it's a long-winded way of me saying you might be onto something, Matt. And I do think that we are witnessing a very special National Hockey League right now. Most talented. I think we'll have to wait and see how the season pans out. It's hard for me to go into saying that again 5 weeks into the year, but this is shaping up to be a really fun year for so many reasons, and that's certainly one of them.
Well, I guess, as you said, we will have to see at the end of the year. Neal, thank you so much for coming on the Blue Line Blast podcast with us. Again, ladies and gentlemen, this is Neal McHale we're talking with from IIHF.com. And we'll be back with more Blue Line Blast podcast right after our second non-existent sponsor break of the evening. All right, ladies and gentlemen, so welcome back from our second non-existent sponsor break of the show. I swear one day we're going to have something to say there.
Yeah.
But we just had a terrific all-hockey conversation with our pal Neal McHale from IIHF.com. Really, one of the best guests we've had so far on the Blue Line Blast podcast here.
100% agree.
Of our run. Jim, there's some concerning news that we need to get to.
Mm-hmm.
So we all know the Olympics are coming up in February, and the league is going back for the first time since 2014.
Mm-hmm.
So word out of the GM meetings was that the league is sending a delegation over to test the ice because they're a bit worried about the construction process. Jim, if the Olympics were still 2 years away, this is a non-story. Jim, the Olympics we're in November right now. December, January, February. Literally, I think the first game starts in less than 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
And they're concerned about construction.
Yeah.
Jim, I wouldn't be too comfortable right now if I was the players.
No, look, they wanted to go. The league, look, Gary Bettman's talked about it. Bill Daley's talked about it. The tardiness of it, not to their liking, as Gary Bettman has said during the Board of Governors meeting after. He's like, usually these rinks are done within 6 months of the game, a year, so they can test the facilities. There was supposed to be an event next month to test the ice, women's and men's event to test the ice. Don't forget, it's just not the NHL and the men's event. It's the women's event in these facilities as well. There's 2 rinks. And also, don't forget, like, if we look at it, now this event's getting pushed to January. The rink may not even be ready before the start. There's been jokes going around saying, potential outdoor games for the Olympics because in the roof. Like, there's no, and the IOC and the statement that I received after they talked about it's going to be ready. They're going to be ready for the event. There's no backup plan, no contingency plan. We don't know if Turin's available. We don't know the status of that facility. They want to have it in Milan. That's their goal. But the problem is this is really concerning because, again, this is not in the hands of the National Hockey League. As Gary Bettman has said, they're invited guests. But Dan Craig's going over. They're sending help. At some point, if the NHL is going to continue to go back, and this is part of the CBA, the NHL has to be involved in the construction process of the rinks to get these things on time because these are NHL rinks that they're playing on now. The NHL size rinks. There's no longer throughout international hockey. It is the NHL size, not the Olympic size, and this is a problem because, again, the delays, the IOC, the promises, like. The NHL doesn't really get a lot out of this, and they're risking it all for the Olympics.
Look, the NHL basically just gets risked because they don't even get marketing out of it really too much. There are 2 points that I do want to make. One, and I might be in the minority on this, outdoor games at the Olympics don't sound half bad to me.
No, they don't. I actually like it.
Cool. Like, that sounds pretty damn cool. Now, I know it's not feasible, but that sounds pretty cool to me. The other thing is, look, I've run events for years now, okay? How do you, as the IOC, not have a backup contingency plan? Like, that's just smart event management to have some sort of backup. whatever that backup is. If you're gonna go wherever you're gonna go, like it's to break glass in case of emergency. Like that's event management 101.
Right.
Like I took in my master's program way back when, and I can't believe I just said it that way. But way back when, like you have to have as part of your event management plan, you have to have a backup just in case of emergency. If I would have submitted for one of my projects an event plan that didn't have a backup contingency, a break glass in case of emergency option, I would have failed on the spot.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we've all taken risk management. We've all talked about it. You have a backup plan to a backup plan to a backup plan. You don't have guys backing these guys up. Like, this has been an issue because we have yet to see pictures of a finished building. We've only seen like construction where it's supposed to be, these diagrams, all this stuff. Like, this is an issue. And if, again, we all would like these outdoor games, but I don't think the players would like it too much. There's a lot of games that need to be played over a 2-week period. This isn't something the NHL likes. You can hear it when Gary and Bill Daly talk. They're not happy about it because, again, this is something that was negotiated with the PA. And let's not forget the PA is sending players over there. Do I think they're going to pull the shoot on it? No. Is there a chance they could? Maybe, but I don't think so. They're too deep into it. However, look, this is something that has to be addressed moving forward between all these parties because, look, we know what the NHL is doing with the World Cup of Hockey. We know they're trying to get their facilities in place with the bids for the cities, the host cities. Again, we got to get this locked down for February because they're going to do this again years from now. And they got to have these facilities ready for these players because this is just not a good look going into the Olympics like this. But again, we all should remember what happened in Sochi with the bathrooms and all this stuff. So is it surprising? No.
Well, look, as you said, is it surprising? No. Like, there are plenty of times in the Olympics, both summer and winter Olympics, that literally facilities are not finished being built until like a week before the games. So in that regard, like, this is not surprising. It is worrisome. I will say, for anyone saying, oh, well, they wouldn't dare pull the shoot. Well, a couple of years ago, everyone was saying, oh, they wouldn't dare pull the shoot. Well, a little thing called COVID happened. Now, not to put COVID and an unfinished rink in the same category, but, I mean, they could have still gone.
No, they couldn't. They weren't going. Look, I'll say this.
So I'm just saying, if the league, and again, you got to look at the agreement in the CBA carefully enough. The league can pull them out.
I just think they're too far deep into that process because rosters are supposed to be named soon.
Right, but okay, so you're saying, oh, well, they're too far deep into the process. Other than Team USA and Team Canada, what teams are going to be overtly negatively affected by not having NHLers?
Sweden, Finland.
Sweden and Finland can fill most of their rosters is going to be non-NHLers.
I just think the talent. I think the talent that they have coming over, I think would be worrisome. I think Sweden, gets affected a lot more than they are right now. Like, I think Sweden for sure. Czech's not so much because it's mostly non-NHLers. Switzerland might be affected. Their top guys. Germany too. They're their top guys. I'm not saying
Germany loses Draisaitl. Other than that,
and Stützle.
So they lose two guys. They can overcome it. And if way back when they didn't used to send pros to the Olympics. That's why we still celebrate the 1980 team 45 years later.
Going back to the COVID thing, because I know we're gonna wrap. Look, they were never going in 2018. They were never going after that because of the time difference. This was the circle date that they were always going back to. But again, if they come back from this trip next week after the Global Series games between Nashville and Pittsburgh and things are not up to snuff, panic button may be pushed and there could be some tough decisions that are going to have to be made.
Yep, absolutely. We're at least in agreement there. And, Jim, I think it's time that you take it away and wrap us up for the evening.
We'll take us home. Obviously, guys, Blue Line Blast podcast. Thank you for everybody's support. Again, happy Veterans Remembrance Day. Thanks to our guest, Neal McHale, IIHF.com. As well, great topics throughout. Jim Biringer, Matthew Blittner. Guys, we'll be back again next week for another jam-packed episode. Take care.